All of these men encountered God. And this encounter that they had with God, it changed their life. We have to begin to get an upward view of God. We see ourselves as insufficient, but this God has the ability to work in people like us to accomplish His plan. Today we settle into session number 7, which is talking about counting the cost and suffering willingly. They say if you want a human being to be involved in something, it needs to possess 2 qualities. One, it needs to be desirable, and one, it needs to be reachable, if you would say. And for example, I don't drive a Chevrolet Corvette, not because it's not reachable, it's just not exactly desirable. And I don't drive a Porsche or a Lamborghini, not because they're not desirable, it's just that it's not reachable. I can't afford that. And so, for someone like me, just like with you, everything in life it needs to possess desirability, or it needs to be desirable, and then it needs to be reachable, that we believe that we can achieve that, or we can actually obtain it. We see that in regards to cars. They say the average car cost in the third quarter of 2021 monthly payment was $609. That's $7,300 a year that we normally as Americans spend on a car payment. AAA said if you add in depreciation, loan interest, fuel cost, insurance, maintenance fees, etc., that adds another $9,561 a year. And so if you were to take on the average, we in America driving a car for an average of 15,000 miles a year, that cost is $16,869 a year. And over a 5-year span, your car that you drive, for most of us, will cost you $84,345. That's a great cost, but what we understand is we're willing to pay the cost because of the value that we get from it. From that vehicle, we can do a lot. We can keep jobs, go see family, go on vacations. Then you take something even more expensive in regards to children. Tim Parker wrote an article called The Cost of Raising a Child in the United States, and more than you might think. And according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the average cost of raising a child to the age of 15 in 2015 was, listen closely, $233,610. If you take that and you add 2% inflation, a child that's born in 2022, the government estimates that it'll cost parents $272,000 for you to raise that child up to the age of 18. That makes you wonder, is it worth it? And see, with life, we make these choices all the time. Is it worth it? Is what we're going to get out of that thing, is it worth what it will cost us to be involved or to participate? Well, Jesus said it this way in the book of Luke, chapter number 14. He said, if any man come unto me and hate not his father, his mother, his wife, his children, and brethren and sisters, yea, his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. And whosoever does not bear his cross and come after me, he cannot be my disciple. There is a burden that we have to bear, every one of us. It's called our cross. It's the burden we will bear to be a follower of Jesus Christ. And then he tells this parable. He says, for which of you, intending to build a tower, sits not down first and counts the cost, whether he have sufficient to finish it, lest haply, that means perchance, that after he has laid the foundation and he is not able to finish it, all that behold it, his unfinished building, begin to mock him, saying, this man began to build and was not able to finish. So it's interesting that Jesus says, through parable form, he's like, you need to count the cost. And you might say, well, what possible cost could there be in following Jesus Christ? And I'll just give you kind of a quick list. How about that? First of all, Jesus said that you'll be reviled and you'll be reproached. That means to be treated with contemptuous language. There's going to be people that will talk down to you and they'll use bad terminology about you because you're a follower of Jesus Christ, and me too. He said, though, you'll be persecuted. In fact, Paul said in the book of 2 Timothy, yea, all that live godly in Christ Jesus shall suffer persecution. So you can count on being spoken poorly of if you become a believer in Jesus Christ. You can count on some persecution, which means that they're going to pursue you in a manner to injure you. That people will pursue you in a manner to injure you, to vex you, or to afflict you, or they'll harass you with unjust punishment for what they believe was supposed offenses. And then Jesus said that they're going to say all manner of evil against you falsely for being a follower. He said you will be hated in the book of Luke chapter number 6. And then in the book of Luke chapter 6, the same verse 22, he said, they will separate you from their company. So if you even take it up to that point that for being a follower of Jesus Christ, what you and I are likely to have to go through is that we're going to be reviled and reproached. We're going to be persecuted by people throughout life. They're going to say all manner of evil against us falsely. They're going to hate us, and they're going to separate us from their company. And then Jesus said in the book of Matthew chapter number 24 that there are some people that would be afflicted and that they would even be killed because they were believers in and served Jesus Christ. And so when you think about that, then you stop. And Jesus has an interesting approach. See, it's opposite of the devil. The devil always puts his best on the table up front, but he doesn't tell you what that life will lead to and the destruction that will follow. In other words, one old preacher said that the devil shows his best, but his best can't countervail or can't overcome the bad that's going to come, because sin, when it is finished, it brings forth death. But that old preacher said that Jesus is different, that Jesus, when he offers to make a change in our life, he brings the worst up front. But the worst that we suffer for being a Christian, by far, it's not even to be compared to the greatness and the blessings that come along with being a follower of Jesus Christ. It's so minimal compared to the blessings that we receive by being a follower of Christ. But Jesus wants you to know right up front, hey, you need to count the cost of what it will cost to be a follower of mine. So it's interesting, some people had some great quotes in regards to the suffering for Christ. One of the great Baptist preachers of the past, a guy named Charles Spurgeon, said these words, I am content to be criticized, misunderstood, and misrepresented. The cost, he said, was counted long ago, and the estimate was so liberal that there is no fear of it being exceeded. It's that same preacher that said that I'm content to be criticized, misunderstood, and misrepresented that also said great faith must have great trials. They tell a story, a lady by the name of Beth Landers tells a story about a man that ran across an emperor moth. She says he took the moth home and took the cocoon home to watch it emerge, and one day a small opening appeared, and for several hours the moth struggled, but he couldn't seem to force his body past a certain point. Deciding that something was wrong, the man took a pair of scissors. He snipped the remaining bit of the cocoon, and the moth emerged easily, but its body was large and swollen, and the wings were small and shriveled. He expected that just in a few hours that the wings would spread out to their natural beauty, but they didn't. Instead of developing the moth to be free to fly, the moth spent its entire life dragging its swollen body around with its shriveled up legs. You see, it's the constricting of the cocoon, the struggle that's necessary for the moth to come out of the cocoon, that passing through the tiny opening that presses the fluid from the body into the wings that actually makes the wings develop. And so the ironic thing is that the merciful snip that the man did to the cocoon to help the moth actually was its undoing. It was cruel. And Beth Landers says this statement because sometimes in life, the struggle is what we need. And when you think about that for just a minute, we think about the words that the Apostle Paul said, that tribulation, those troubles that come into our life, they're not all bad because tribulation works patience. And then he said patience, it works experience. And then he said that experience, that it brings forth hope. And so when we look at the issue of suffering, we often wonder what good could come out of that. But the answer is a lot of good can come. And so you have to count the cost as a believer and count it up front, because it will be there. However, the benefit of being a follower of Christ far exceeds any suffering that you'll ever go through. And the struggles that we go through along the way, they are what help develop us. In fact, Peter said, the trial of your faith being much more precious than gold that perishes. Though it be tried with fire, will be found unto the praise and the glory of Jesus Christ. And so sometimes the struggle is just what you and I need to develop us in our Christian faith. I'll leave you with this. Oswald Sanders said, "Scars are the authenticating marks of faithful discipleship and true spiritual leadership." Scars are authenticating marks. And the question begs as we close this session out, would you be willing to have some scars to follow Jesus Christ?